go ahead and get rolling. My name is Sarah Brannigan. I am a graduate student in the Department of Environmental Science and also Public and International Affairs. I'm here on behalf on the Environmental Studies Graduate Student Association tonight. We help put together things on the university end of this event. So thanks for coming out. We're really excited to see so many faces here tonight to learn more about Sledge Forest. So tonight we're going to talk about Sledge Forest, which is a recognized significant natural area for New Hanover County in North Carolina. We will learn about the importance of preserving significant natural areas, and you'll also hear about the people that will be impacted by this possible development, as well as implications for the community and development in our rapidly growing area of southeastern North Carolina. So this night, we'll have 3 presentations, followed by a panelist Q&A, who are all sitting right here. They didn't want to be in the spotlight quite yet. And then we will have an audience Q&A. I'll scoot around with a microphone if you just raise your hand with questions whenever we get to that portion. And then to wrap up, we'll have a short discussion to talk about how you can get involved if you so choose going forward. I would like to take a moment to thank our student org sponsors who helped put this together, one of which is Environmental Studies Graduate Student Association. We also have the Seahawk Wildlife Society, Earth and Ocean Sciences Club, and the Sigma Gamma Epsilon Theta chapter, which is the Honor Society of the Earth Sciences. So quick round of applause for those groups. I will briefly introduce our panelists before we get started for the evening. First, we have Kayne Darrell. Kayne is a longtime resident of Castlehane, North Carolina. She's a community activist and grassroots organizer for several local environmental and social justice projects over the past 20 years, while working to help promote more responsible, sustainable growth in New Hanover and surrounding counties. She is retired from the New Hanover Regional Medical Center after 21 years of working in the emergency department as a radiographer. She's co-founder of Sledge Forest, the founder of Citizens Against Titan, and co-founder for the nonprofit Street Safe Life Saving Dradi program. Next, we have Roger Shew. Roger grew up in Brunswick County and is an alum of UNCW. He has a master's in geology from UNC Chapel Hill. Mike keeps going out. And a master's of science education from the University of Houston. Roger is a senior lecturer in the Earth and Ocean Sciences and Environmental Sciences Department here at UNCW, where he teaches topics in coastal geology, energy and water resources, coastal plain ecosystems, and sustainability. He has received the NC Earth Science Teacher, Public Service, and Community Engagement for sustainability awards. My bad. Roger is a board supervisor with New Hanover County Soil and Water and a board member of Cape Fear River Watch. He works with the Nature Conservancy on various projects, including longleaf pine restoration and flytrap studies. He has a film on natural treasures of southeastern North Carolina and works with the community on topics ranging from water quality and offshore energy to conservation and land use. And last up, we have Andy Wood. Andy is a 4th-generation biologist and graduate of Texas A&M University, where he studied wildlife management, natural resource conservation, and museum science. Andy joined the modern environmental movement with Earth Day in 1970, helping organize and conduct stream cleanups, paper drives, and river monitoring. His conservation career includes 12 years as a curator of education for North Carolina aquariums, 11 years as state education director for the National Audubon Society, and 28 years as a volunteer nature commentator for public radio station WHQR. A collection of his commentaries were published in his first book, Backyard Carolina, in 2006. Today, Andy volunteers as the director for Coastal Plain Conservation Group, which is a nonprofit environmental organization based in Pender County that works to protect biodiversity and prevent extinction of rare and imperiled plants and wildlife. With that being said, I will pass it over to our first speaker for the night, Ms. Kayne.
Thank you, Sarah. It's warm in here. I'm going to get a quick drink before we start. Can you guys hear me okay in the back? Good. So, thank you all so much for being here tonight. I'm so happy to see all of your lovely faces. Really glad to be doing this. I've actually been really excited about doing this event, planning for it. I've worked with young people in other grassroots initiatives that I've done over the year, and they always just bring so much passion and energy and new ideas to the table. So I'm hoping those students out there will be inspired to come and join us. we will welcome you with open arms. Thank you especially to everyone that helped plan this event. I really appreciate all of your efforts. So my name is Kayne Darrell. I am one of the founding members of Save Sledge Forest, and maybe we should start tonight at the start. Why we formed this campaign and this initiative in the first place. It started back in early October of last year when I was notified about an application that had been submitted to the New Hanover County Planning Department. So I took a look at that application. It was for a development up in Castle Hayne, which is where I live, called Hilton Bluffs. And when I looked at that application, there were just these red flags like all over this thing. It literally left me, I don't know, kind of like with this sense of dread. I mean, just the sheer scale of this project was truly alarming. And what also caught my attention was the type of application that had been submitted and approved by our planning staff. It's called a performance subdivision. And basically, in a nutshell, what that does is it allows the project to bypass the rezoning process that is normally required and should be required, especially for a project of this size. So anyway, I reached out to Marion and Andy, the two other founding members of Save Sledge Forest, and we got together, we went over this application. We realized right away that this was information that our community would want to know about, that they needed to know about. And so our first thing we wanted to do was to raise awareness and educate the public about this project and all of its issues. And so we just started talking to people. We had conversations with our friends, our neighbors, the guy behind us on the checkout line. We knocked on doors. We had a town hall very early on out in Castle Hayne. Over 250 people showed up for that. And we've been holding these forums and presentations and panels ever since. We created a website so we could take all that stuff we had learned, put it in one place, and share it with the rest of our community. Sometimes I start going and then I forget about I have a slideshow up there. What else have we done? We created a petition that is doing very well, by the way. We've also been recruiting citizens to show up at county commissioners meetings to speak about their concerns. And we have had at least 2 to 3 speakers at every single county commissioners meeting for the last almost 5 months now. We've also delivered probably close to 300 emails and letters to our county commissioners, as well as to the planning staff. We've met many times with the planning staff and our elected officials, as have others in our community. And all of those efforts, they have been paying off. Back at the December County Commissioners meeting, our commissioners formally requested that the planning department address the 6, oops, did I pass it? Let's go back one. Okay. Oh, that's because I forgot to mention that we've also had a lot of media attention, including at the national level, which is fantastic. All right, there's those 6 concerns. So at that meeting, our commissioners formally requested that these 6 concerns be addressed before the Hilton Bluffs project was allowed to move forward. We are, by the way, still waiting for them to respond to some of that. Then in February, Copper Builders held a community meeting that was, with 6 days' notice, there was an estimated 400 people that showed up at that meeting. Many of them couldn't get into that room because it was over capacity. Also, we have some other great news. We have recently retained legal counsel. We're super excited about our highly qualified attorney that we've hired. And we really think that's going to be able to take us to the next level in this campaign. So we're super excited about that. And I want you all to know, we are just getting started. We plan to continue to grow this movement, to put pressure on our public officials, to do everything that we can to stop sledge forests and protect our community. But we can't do it alone. We need help. And in fact, I'm actually going to ask you all to help right now. Super easy to do. Take out your phones, start recording this on Facebook Live, take some photos or some videos of the event here. Maybe you and your friends talking about why you came here tonight, why this issue is important to you, and then share it on all your platforms. Spread the word. Hashtag Save Sledge Forest. Don't forget that part. And let's do everything we can to keep growing this movement. You know, when I think about it, we probably should not be surprised at all the attention that we've been getting with this particular issue and how much support we've been getting. Because I know that I am not the only one that has been looking around at what's been happening in this county and feeling frustrated, alarmed, angry sometimes. Feelings of helplessness and hopelessness because I don't know how to stop what's happening. The overdevelopment, the awful clear-cutting that we're seeing, the lack of support for all of this growth, the lack of infrastructure, the lack of any plan at all, it seems, and the disappearance of our last vestiges of green space to put up one more apartment complex. And so maybe this idea of building this massive development, 4,000 home development, in what is our last large expanse of old growth forest, maybe that's the tipping point. And maybe this is the moment where we all finally collectively say, enough is enough. And I can tell you that I believe with all my heart that if we can come together with one voice, one clear and strong and powerful voice, we can save Sledge Forest. And maybe, just maybe, we can stop this runaway train of overdevelopment in the process. I am a firm believer in the power of the people. I've seen it work. I've been a part of that experience. And I can tell you that feeling empowered is a hell of a lot better than feeling helpless and hopeless. So my hope, actually my goal really, is to help all of you feel empowered, to help you believe that you have the power to make a difference, because you do. And if we can harness that power, we can accomplish our goal. We can accomplish any goal we want, and we can save this forest. So I just want to talk a little bit about why this forest is important and deserves saving. I'm going to just give you a very broad overview. I'm going to let our experts fill in all the details for you when I'm done. But Sledge Forest is a very unique, biodiverse, old-growth forest that, as Sarah mentioned, has been recognized as an area of national significance by the North Carolina Heritage Foundation. It's a privately owned 4,028-acre tract of land in northern New Hanover County. A little over A little over 3/4 of the tract is jurisdictional wetlands, with the remaining 800 to 1,000 acres, depending on who you ask, considered the uplands, which realistically is the only buildable land on the property. It is zoned RA, rural agriculture, as is most of that surrounding area in that part of Castle Hayne. This is a screenshot from the Unified Development Ordinance of our county, and it kind of just tells you what the purpose is of RA with some lovely pictures of what a concept of RA might look like. And this is the definition, our county's definition of RA, and the important thing to see there is that RA only allows for one residential dwelling per acre. And interestingly also, that dwelling can only take up 25% of that acre. Now, Sledge Forest has been owned by the Sledge family for several generations. It has actually been on the market for a couple of years now, and it has gained a lot of interest from conservation groups over the years because it is so special. Unfortunately, however, the owners sold out to the highest bidder, and it is now under contract, not sold, but under contract with copper builders out of Charlotte, who submitted that application for Hilton Bluffs. This is the Hilton Bluffs master plan. You can see here it's 4,000, about 4,000 or so homes. There's a country club, tennis courts, pool. Up in that top corner, there's a golf course and a pony farm. And as you see, most of those 4,000 homes will be clustered down in that right-hand corner there. That's where the upland area is. But I know you're doing the math in your head right now, and you're saying to yourself, wait a second, you're talking about putting 4,000 homes on 800 to 1,000 acres, and I just told you that RA only allows for 1 home per acre. And that's where that performance subdivision issue comes in. And so what that does, it is basically giving the developer a loophole so that he can count all 4,000 of those acres in the density calculation, basically using the 3,000 plus acres of wetlands as a sort of trade-off to put all of those homes in that 25% of actual buildable land. And as I mentioned earlier, this also means that they get to bypass the rezoning process. That makes this massive project that will impact our community in so many ways a by right development. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that rezoning process because it's really important from the public perspective because it requires these 3 steps. One is the developer has to have a mandatory community meeting that has pretty strict requirements, one being that it all goes on the public record. So the community asks questions, discusses their concerns, the developer answers or doesn't answer those questions, and all of that goes into the public record. The second step is that it then goes before the planning board, which is a public hearing and allows for public input regarding the project. And the planning board makes a decision whether to recommend the project move forward or not. The third step is it then goes to the county commissioners meeting, where again, that's a public meeting that allows for public input where the community can voice their concerns that are then taken into consideration when our elected officials, who are supposed to be representing us, decide whether to vote yes or no about this development. That entire process has been completely bypassed by this development. A development that is possibly the largest subdivision in the history of New Hanover County and could double the population of Castle Hayne. And I'm going to go back to this slide with that lovely rural, tranquil-looking horse farms. It's actually fairly representative of that area of Castle Hayne. In fact, I think these were taken right up the road for me on Marathon Avenue. And I thought, just for fun, that I would ask AI to generate an image for me of what 4,000 homes on 1,000 acres might look like compared to this. Now that is a powerful visual. And let me be clear, that is an AI-generated image. It is not representative of what Hilton Bluffs may look like. We don't know that for sure, but that is not necessarily it. But I think it does give us a pretty good idea of what something like this would look like and the kind of impacts it would have on our community. And I'm just going to talk a minute about some of those important impacts. We're talking about 4,000 plus homes, which is 12,000 to 16,000 new residents coming into this plop down in the middle of a wetlands area in a community with already strained resources and infrastructure, where our schools, our hospital, our emergency services, and our roads cannot handle this high volume and influx of new residents. It's located where presently there's only one access in and out of this to accommodate the estimated 30,261 daily car trips. I'm going to say that one again. 30,261 additional cars every day on our roads from this one development. The access roads that are being proposed would cut through those quiet rural RA neighborhoods. And then those 30,000 plus cars would flow out onto Castle Hayne Road, a 2-lane, overburdened, F-rated road. It's located and surrounded by wetlands and a floodplain, all of which with expected sea level rise could be underwater by the year 2050. It's also adjacent to a hazardous waste site with a toxic plume of very dangerous chemicals that has recently been discovered to have migrated in some areas past the areas of containment, where it has been contained for going on almost 30 years now. And no one is answering our questions about what happens when you're disrupting the water flow, the soil, the landmass from this massive construction. What happens to that toxic plume? Where does it go? And could it end up in our drinking water? We're all on private wells out in that area. 4,000 homes with limited access, a golf course, and a pony farm. Surrounded on 3 sides by tidal waters. What could possibly go wrong? By right should not mean that you can ignore the rights of everyone else. One person's property's rights shouldn't infringe on the fundamental rights of this community. And responsible development considers those rights. It considers the health, the safety, and the well-being of the entire community. That is not responsible growth. And I'm going to finish with this. The Save Sledge Forest community has not wavered in our commitment and our dedication to protect this community and to save sledge forest, all 4,038 acres of sledge forest. And I'm going to remind you one more time, we are just getting started. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our other 2 speakers. I am very honored to be on a panel with both of them. And thank you. Roger Shew.
You see why Kayne is an activist speaker. One of the things that New Hanover County and the city of Wilmington has recognized in their surveys as well as in their reports is that people of this county have said that green space and traffic are 2 of the biggest issues of the day. And those 2 things are certainly exactly what we're looking at here with Sledge Forest. So what I'd like to do is go through a couple of things just to show you kind of the setting of what we got up in this area. Northern New Hanover County is really the last bastion, if you will, of green space in New Hanover County. All along Sidbury Road, as well as here in Sledge Forest, those are areas that are some of the most rapidly growing in our area. And that's because that's where there's space left. If you go on Sidbury Road, you'll see cleared areas and areas that have removed trees. I think we all recognize that trees provide lots of value, not just for, economy of those developments, if you just left some in there. It also is important for our physical and mental health as well. So for us being able to have space still in New Hanover County is really critical for all things that we do. So this is the area that Kayne just showed you, my segue for connecting with what Kayne just said. And one of the things in looking at these areas that you'll see is that RA, everything that you've got, let's see if this, all this area over in here, those little green spots are upland areas. Everything else is in this darker green is all wetlands. There are some cart rut roads that go in this area as well. And so one of the things in looking at this area, as Kayne said, this is the upper area. This is actually, getting up 20 feet or so. Most everything down here is 2 to 8 feet in elevation along that area. So in looking at this, I just wanted to show you what the area is. This is the appraised value is on the New Hanover County property assessments at $30 million for it. It's 4,039 acres. The uplands is 900 plus. The wetlands over 3,000 as you see them there. And so this 1,000 acres of upland, that area that is going to be right in here, you can see the difference in color. It's pretty easy to know what's going on out here. All you got to do is look at a Google map or anything else. You know where it's wet and where it's dry. But it turns out that even in this area where the 1,000 units are going to be, about half of that is also hydric soils. Whereas everything else out here is also hydric soils. That means that they're poorly drained, they're wet most all the time, and they're really not appropriate for development in the most cases. Now, admittedly, some of these are different hydric soils. Some are very poorly drained, whereas others are just poorly drained. So whenever you look at these for stormwater management, it becomes very important to know what your soils are for stormwater mitigation. So this whole area that you're looking at in here is what we've got. And this is just a couple of pictures to show you. Everything that's in blue is wetlands. This again is the development area. So this map over here, I might say, that's the 100-year floodplain. So as you can see, most everything is within the 100-year floodplain in this. The only place that's not is this little piece that's right here where they're looking at putting in, the 1,000 or 4,000 homes, depending upon how you look at it. So one of the things that's come up of late is the developer has proposed to provide some acreage to a place called Unique Places to Save. And Unique Places to Save is looking at being a conservation area for this amount of acreage, 1,162 acres. Now, I don't know exactly where that is. I haven't seen a map of it. But what they said in the discussion was that this location P, O, and N is part of that 1,100 acres that would be conserved. Okay. So I just drew this to illustrate to you how big an area 1,100 acres is. So that's 1,100 of the 4,000 acres that goes all in this area. Now, I want to highlight that all of this area, as I'm going to show you, is really, really significant. It is not just this 1,000 acres that we're looking at with that. So also to orient you, if you look, this is the Upland Hilton area where most of the houses will be built. This is the Wooden Shew subdivision, and here's GE. I'll show you some maps there a little bit later. And for those of you who were around a few years back, this is where the sand mine area that was looked at for possible development back about 7, 8, 9 years ago. So this is what was said for the nonprofit enters an agreement with the developer to purchase 1,000 acres of sledge forest. This was the picture that was associated with that. And if you look at this, the Charlotte-based copper builders said that they would look at Unique Places to possibly get monies from the North Carolina Land and Water Trust Fund. And the value is about $15 million. They wanted to get about $10 million from the Land and Water Trust Fund to be able to acquire the acres. Now, importantly, with that 1,000 or 1,100 acres is you would deduct that from the 4,000 acres. So basically, you would end up with 2,900 acres then that could be looked at for this thing of having one house per acre, or in this case, now you're going to have 3 houses per acre instead of 4, like Kayne was saying a minute ago, because we're down now to 2,900 acres. Everybody with me? Yeah. Okay. So in looking at that, that's a very important thing to consider. The question is that good enough or is it not? So let me show you why this is such a significant area. North Carolina Natural Heritage Group identified this area all the way from Holly Shelter down the Northeast Cape Fear River, the floodplain here, all the way down to Smith Creek. Everything shown within that yellow kind of outline is recognized as a significant area by our North Carolina Natural Heritage Group. And you know what they said? The most important, the most valuable piece of that tract, which is a connective unit for our species, plants and animals, that increases biodiversity, the most important of any spot within that is right there. And that's Sledge Forest. The most significant of the significant areas that's there. And whenever you look at that, it becomes really important to think about, why is that so important? Well, I think it's good to look at history. And if you look at what natural heritage was put here for, it was put here by our North Carolina legislature. And it's called the Nature Preserve Act. And so what it says is the continued population growth and land development in North Carolina. Sound familiar? So it's made it necessary and desirable that areas of natural significance be identified and preserved before they are destroyed. These natural areas are irreplaceable. I think we got one on our hands right now. So reminders of the vital dependence of, this area, health of human community on the health of other natural communities is so important. And so it's important to the people of North Carolina that they retain the opportunity to maintain contact with these natural communities and environmental systems may be dedicated for the benefit of present and future citizens of the state. I don't think I can say it any better. Our legislature said that back in the 1980s. I think that's exactly what we need to be doing here and looking at our natural areas in New Hanover County and throughout southeastern North Carolina. Some of you are from Brunswick County. You know the issues there as well. And so we need to make decisions that most benefit society, the economy, that have the least, I repeat, the least ecological damages for our areas. So these are just some of the pictures that's in the brochures for the area. I'm not going to dwell on this. We could talk about this, and Andy's going to talk to you about some of the biodiversity stuff. But let me just say that there's a lot of variety in this area. Lots and lots of not just bottomland hardwoods, but pristine marsh grasses. And one of the really important things that's along this river is what we call primary nursery grounds. Everything that you see then, this is the Northeast Cape Fear River, that's the Cape Fear River. Everything you see red along there, those are primary nursery grounds, meaning this is forage and habitat areas for our finfish and shellfish. And anything that you do to jeopardize those natural areas for those, you're doing harm to an $80 to $100 million economy in North Carolina because of fish and shellfish. So anyway, you might want to put some roads in here, because if they were to put their horse farm, as Kayne said, here you got to have a road to get there. What happens when you put a road across a wetland area? You're going to preclude flood maintenance of waters. You're going to back it up. You're not supposed to put impediments within a floodplain for floodwaters. So are we going to have any floodwaters? Well, let's see. So this is what we call a wetland map. This is Fish and Wildlife. Everything that you see in green here are wetlands. Everything. And by the way, these are not just wetlands. These are true connected wetlands, even with the new Sackett rule, because these particular ones are connected directly to a navigable water body. So these are jurisdictional, federally looked at, clean water type wetlands that we got, okay? So the question is, how much of these soils that we got in these wetlands as well as the uplands, how much of this is actually hydric soils? Well, it turns out that of the 4,000 acres, about 90% of this is actually hydric. Now, that doesn't mean you can't develop on some of these, but in some of these, 70% of it, about these two types of soils, these are extremely poorly drained soils. These are mostly out in this area, as you see it there. But if you look at it, even in the upland area, Merville and Leon soils are up there, and those are poorly drained hydric soils too. So stormwater management is going to be an issue even in the place where they're going to be putting the houses as well. So let me just say, very short comment. We could talk about this all night, but I did want to show you, since Kayne mentioned about GE, this is the area of GE acreage. There's Wood and Shew. There's where the Hilton area be. And by the way, when you see a topographic map that has these little blue things, that means it's a wetland area. And so in looking at this, General Electric, has been here for many years now. Good business. But they did have some issues with some contaminants, both in shallow and deeper, even PD deeper kinds of areas of aquifers. This is the area that you're looking at. There's Wood and Shew, and right here is a line of what we call pump and treat wells, because there's contamination here. So they put these wells right along this area. That's the boundary line. That's Fletch Road. So right along there, they put those pump and treat wells to keep those contaminants from moving off site. There's also some contaminants up here. This is the old sand mine site. And there's a few wells up there that indicated in 2016 that there was some contaminants there as well, okay? We don't have all the data because they haven't sampled there in a while. They actually need to go there and sample again within this area. And this is the pink's bad in this case. Pink is the areas that have some contamination on the site. And for the most part, they've been doing a really good job of controlling these contaminants. They haven't let them go off site. But as Kayne said, one of the ones that we've been looking at is right in this area that's kind of moved past some of those pump and treat wells. So actually they're now sampling the Wood and Shew wells, which are all groundwater wells, shallow and deep, to see if there's anything in those. And DEQ was responsive in our request to do that. So we really thank them for promoting the testing of those wells. But this is the kind of thing that we just need to be aware of in this area as well as in the area up to the northwest of us. So just to summarize, this is what we're looking at. So it turns out, we just got some information today, is that there were 230 houses on an original project from last year that would be kind of a early first phase, if you will. And this new one is now going to be 647 residential lots. That's going to be discussed coming up May 7th for us. Now, this particular area has something called the Technical Review Committee. They look at these and see if you can do ingress and egress, safely. You look at the traffic, you look at stormwater management, and all these other things to determine whether you will approve this development or not. So stay tuned and keep informed on this kind of stuff, because this is the opportunity for us to see. And with new UDOs and comprehensive plans upcoming, I hope all of you guys will take the opportunity to make comment, because what we're seeing now is the results of things that happened in 2016 and earlier. So take advantage now that you can give your input to comprehensive plans and UDOs so that we have those things that are most important to us. And we actually do things that make maybe a little bit more sense. So just really quickly, that's one of the development areas. Now, this isn't Kayne's piece with the AI generated. This is the actual plan that's been put out. So all of these are houses, as you see in the area, okay? And there's the road that comes down by that. So I just say that, keep informed and know what's going on with these particular areas. I think it's so important that whether you agree or disagree with an area, that you know what the facts are so that you can argue effectively and make your point for Save Sledge, or if you appreciate what the developers are doing, but know what you're getting into as you're moving along. Any question? Can you hold it? I'll grab some. So anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Andy now because Mr. Biodiversity will give us some information here. Okay, thanks.
Good evening. Thanks, everybody, for being out here tonight. Tough acts to follow here. So I am going to address biodiversity issues. Everybody knows where we're located on the globe, southeastern North Carolina, part of the North American Atlantic Coastal Plain ecoregion, which extends basically from around the Gulf of Maine down the coastal plain around Florida, through the coastal plain of Gulf of Mexico, and into northern Mexico. So it's a large area of coastal environment. Southeastern North Carolina is regarded as the most biodiverse region within the Atlantic coastal plain north of Florida. By that, I mean we have more different kinds of plants and wildlife in this area, Pender, New Hanover, Columbus, Brunswick counties, than anywhere north of Florida. Georgia beats us with a couple of frogs. Florida beats us with a couple of frogs, but we have them on a variety of plants. So this is a fuzzy image off of Google Earth, just to give you an idea of we're talking about Sledge Forest here, and this is another part of New Hanover County. So what is going to happen here is going to look like this. And when we talk about biodiversity, and I've got a lot of slides to blow through, we're talking about plants and wildlife that are adapted to very specific ecoregions within our ecozone, if you will, or ecotone. So as example, this is a fairly classic image of a longleaf pine savanna with wiregrass right here in the foreground, longleaf pine in the background, mixed with a couple of other pine species, pond pine in particular. But in this grass right here are close to 80 different kinds of plants. The longleaf pine ecosystem, which once covered about 90 million acres of the Atlantic coastal plain, has now been reduced to about 3 million acres. So we've lost already 93% of our biodiversity. That's already gone. New Hanover County, easily 90% of its biodiversity is gone. I've been here 40 years. I remember when I could find at least 50 distinct populations of Venus flytrap in New Hanover County. Now, what, 7? Yeah. And none of those are viable, actually. They're on the decline. One of them is a contrived garden, and the rest are just languishing. This is another image of another type of habitat here. This is a Pocosin and longleaf pine edge habitat. The plants and wildlife that live in the longleaf habitat don't all live in this habitat. So when we talk about biodiversity in our area. I'm not talking about broadly over all of New Hanover, Brunswick, Columbus, or Pender counties. They're in very distinct areas. And then this is another, these are all representative images of habitats that you would find in Sledge Forest. This would be one of the creek systems that meanders off of the Northeast Cape Fear River into Sledge Forest itself. And you can see here cypress trees, swamp tupelo. All told, there's probably 15 or 20 different species of trees. Is that safe? And then a number of shrubs, herbs, ferns, great variety of plants. It's a study that somebody could spend a lifetime engaged with. So for human health, to that of social systems and ecosystems, outward appearances are often misleading. Is that a healthy image? Does anybody want to breathe that? This is in New Hanover County. So when we smell smoke, and I've had this hammered into me by Buck Parr, when you breathe smoke, when I breathe the smoke of a leaf pile, it throws my memory back to childhood and such a wonderful smell until I realized, well, that's formaldehyde, benzene, and other volatile organic compounds that you don't want in your body. So again, longleaf pine habitat. I'm going to blow through a lot of pictures real quick because we don't have time to go through the roughly 800 species of plants that might be in Sledge Forest. So dwarf azalea, which is in bloom right now. Pine lily will be in bloom late summer, early autumn. Venus flytrap, and you can see the flower right here. The flytrap is right here. It's well known if you have a dictionary. The flytrap next to rice and corn might be the most recognized plant in the world. And yet a lot of people don't realize the only place you can find it is right here in southeastern North Carolina. But unfortunately, we've already lost more than 90% of the wild populations. It's a plant that won't go extinct because it's been established all over the world. You can find it growing in bogs in Australia, South Africa, New Jersey, Florida, California. It's a house plant. So it's here as a plant. What's imperiled is its habitat. We're not going to go through that. Grass pink, that'll be opening up in about a week, 10 days, thereabouts, maybe a little later. Carolina gopher frog with its froglet right here. This is an animal that will fit in the palm of your hand. It's a large frog. It's a little smaller than a bullfrog, a little bigger than a green frog. And its call, they bred back February, March. The call of the male gopher frog is almost identical to a human snore. And they're really very charming frogs. They're just really, that's our very own frog, Carolina gopher frog. So named because where do you think you can find it? In the coastal plain of North and South Carolina, but really only in a very few places. It's a critically imperiled species because it breeds in isolated wetland pools, rain pools, that are no longer protected by federal law. So if it's a pool the size of this room, which would be ideal size for a Carolina gopher frog breeding site, that pool can be filled up with impunity because it's no longer protected. One of the most common frogs in Sledge Forest is this creature here, the pine woods tree frog. And this is how you find the frogs in the wild. As you're walking along, you'll just notice, oh, wow, there's a frog sitting there, or in a knot of an oak tree. The tadpole is, in my view, one of the most beautiful tadpoles we have in North America. But this is where they live, just hanging out in the trees, in pine trees in particular. So when we're talking about development of Sledge Forest, we're not talking about just the loss of clear-cut trees. Everything that lives in the trees goes with the trees. So when you see these pyres in the middle of a recently clear-cut development site, that's not just wood burning in there. It's frogs and turtles and lizards, salamanders, small mammals that can't get out of the way of the bulldozer, birds, bird nests. All of that is piled together and set on fire. Empathy, the ability to think about somebody or something else. Another pine woods tree frog. There's a lot of pine wood tree frog out there. I'm a field biologist. I'm out in the woods every day. So this is a aerial photograph of a habitat very similar to Sledge Forest. Back in this area, this light color, these are deciduous cypress and tupelo with pine evergreen mixed in. So it's a mixed community of mixed communities within a larger community. So many of the plants and animals that I was just talking about, you'll find in here, but not in here. They're two different habitats. They don't all live in the same place. So here is the wetter view of Sledge Forest. These images are a little tough to make out, but that's a bit of a stream right here. This is wet. I like to joke with people about boots. Boots don't keep you dry. They determine at what depth you get wet. And if you're walking around in Sledge Forest, the bulk of Sledge Forest, you're going to get wet. Even if you're wearing chest waders, you're going to get wet. It's a wet place. Slimy salamander. You'll find them right at the edge of the longleaf pine or pine forest ecosystem and the wetter swamp forest ecosystem. They don't want to be flooded and they don't want to be dry. They're that Goldilocks. They want to be right in the middle somewhere, under a log. And actually, this adult salamander, I don't have a good guess for how old it is, but could be 5 to 8 years. They spend their entire life under one log. They're not aquatic. The female places an egg about the size of a BB under a damp log, stays with it until it hatches. That youngster goes through metamorphosis in that egg, hatches out as a little miniature of the adult, and then it'll wander away from that log, find its own log, and that's where it spends the rest of its life, under that log. An area of maybe 30 to 100 square feet. This is a trail camera in a swamp, and a great blue heron just walking through a swamp. It's dry, there's no water there. So animals aren't, when we think of a heron, they're not always in a pond. They're wandering all over the place. That heron might be looking for mice, rats, a snake, small frog, maybe a little turtle. It's just wandering through the woods. Red bat, it's a species of great concern. It's in decline. And it's featured here because it'll sleep in leaf litter, but it will also get up into a hollow tree. So when we clear cut a swamp or any other forest habitat, everything goes, not just the tree. Indigo bush, this is on the side of Northeast Cape Fear River, just a couple of miles away from Sledge Forest. The flanking front of Sledge Forest on the Northeast Cape Fear River is lined with this plant, which will be coming into bloom in just a matter of days. Cardinal flower is up in the swamp itself. Lots of crickets, lots of different kinds of crickets. How do you tell a cricket from a grasshopper? Look at the antennae. If it's a long hair-like antennae, it's a cricket. If it's a short, stubby antenna, it's a grasshopper. That's your fun fact for breakfast. Oop. Lots of dragonflies. We have a dozen plus common dragonflies in the area, along with damselflies. That list is growing because we're just now really starting to take a close look at them. Long-tailed skippers, we'll see those late summer. And then broken striped newt, which is near and dear. It's a salamander that we get, again, give a lot of attention to the Venus flytrap having a restricted range. But that salamander, that newt, which will be here later, its range overlaps that of the Venus flytrap. The only place in the world that you can find a broken striped newt is right here in southeastern North Carolina, basically from Pender County to Horry County. But Horry County has already lost more than 90% of its habitat as well. So why does this make such an important ambassador? Because it has an aquatic larval stage with frilly, feathery like gills. And then after several weeks as an aquatic larva, the salamander leaves the pond as a red eft, a juvenile, and it wanders the forest for several years, 2 to 7 years. It's a long-lived salamander. So this is full grown. They're like 3.5 to 4 inches. And then after several years of wandering around in the woods, it moves back to a pond where it spends the next several years as an adult, an aquatic adult. So again, just because in this case of Hilton, they want to pave over the upland area, and they're saying they're going to leave the bottomland swamp area, there are plants and animals that need both upland and wetland to complete their life cycle. Oop, lots of duplicates. Barking tree frog right here. That's our largest tree frog. It doesn't fit in the palm like a gopher frog, but it's a big tree frog. These are all animals that are going to be negatively impacted by what's going on with development all around the area. Eastern box turtles are in great decline. As mentioned in my intro, I was with the aquarium for over a dozen years, and I drove the same route every day to get to the aquarium. And the first years of my tenure there, I would find roughly 30 to 40 box turtles from Hooker Road to the aquarium at Fort Fisher, most of them dead. When I left in 2000, I found one dead box turtle that year. That's how the box turtles have declined, just from roads. Spotted turtles. Those two animals need both wet and dry conditions. Even if it's an aquatic turtle, a snapping turtle, a sea turtle, even sea turtles need dry land because they don't give birth to live young. They place eggs in the soil. Do we want it all? Yes. Chicken turtle, another species in decline. Lots of lizards in there. This is another little critter, rough earth snake, very small. It's a species that just gets mushed by the heavy equipment. And when you see the equipment rolling over these areas being cleared, each one of those pieces of equipment weighs 20 to 50 tons. And it's really funny talking to the contractors. Oh yeah, you see these wide tracks? Yeah, that's to displace the weight. Oh, really? Will you let it drive over your foot? No, they don't. But they like to make you think that their tractor doesn't have that much impact. Corn snake, hognose also in decline, even the eastern hognose. The southern hognose is in real bad shape because of habitat loss. This is another ambassador for wetland areas, our swamp canary or prothonotary warbler, or in England it would be pronounced protonotary warbler. This is a male gathering up nest material. Pileated woodpecker, an iconic swamp bird. And this is how we go about development. We bring in equipment, clear the land, load it into a truck, pile up the rest, burn it, and then haul off the biodiversity of our ecoregion to some dump site. This was yesterday. This is another subdivision in our area where they've basically cleared right to the water's edge of a natural pond in near Porter's Neck. That is a turtle that's come up from the pond, probably to nest. So that's going to get crunched. I'm supposed to be talking about biodiversity, so that's what I'm doing. This is going to get swept up with the bulldozers as well. So here's something just to ponder. Back up a moment. Oops. Oh boy, oh boy. Here we go. Put me in front of a computer. So I like to think of Earth as a starship. Right now, our planet is spinning at about 1,000 miles an hour. As we orbit our nearest star at about 70,000 miles an hour. As that star, so the star is going around our galaxy at 500,000 miles an hour. And our galaxy is swirling through outer space, the universe, at about 1,000,000 miles an hour. So in the hour or so that we have been together, we've already traveled 1,000,000 miles in multiple directions at once. We're a starship. That's our galaxy. When I talk biodiversity, that's a little snail that I work with called Greenfield ramshorn. Its namesake was Greenfield Lake, where they no longer exist. In fact, it may no longer exist in the wild. It might already be extinct in the wild because of saltwater intrusion. So when I talk about biodiversity, I'm talking about parts, pieces and parts of our satellite, of our starship. Here's a nut, or rather a bolt, in the starship, space station. Imagine, if you will, an astronaut in the space station just sitting there idle, and oh, there's a screw right there. I wonder what that does. You know, I'm not sure what it does. It may not be all that important. Let's pop that thing out. We don't need it. I have no idea what it does. I'm using this example because we often say, save the frogs because they may have a chemical in their skin that will cure cancer. What if they don't have a chemical in their skin that will cure cancer? Does that justify letting it go extinct? Just because we don't know what that screw does doesn't mean we should automatically get rid of it. So here's what we're doing to our starship, to our life support system. When I think of trees and biodiversity, I'm thinking about life support system and HVAC. We're traveling through space, again, multiple directions, 1,000 miles an hour in one direction, 70,000 miles an hour in another, 500,000 miles in another, and 1,000,000 miles in another direction. And there's no rest stops anywhere. We're all stuck here on Earth. The quicker we empty this cookie jar of natural resources, well, that's not a good story to go down. So, remember whaling? Imagine the whalers, 1700s, 1800s, early 1900s. They thought this was sustainable. There'll always be whales out there to hunt. We'll just boil them. They'll always be here. This is today's whale. We are cooking the golden goose. No, we're scrambling her last eggs and cooking them. And then we're pouring all kinds of toxins on ourselves in the process. So all of these compounds are going to go, as Roger was talking about, with poorly draining soils and very poorly draining soils, hydric soils. That means stormwater doesn't percolate down through the soil. It just washes off, collects into stormwater lagoons that overtop and pour directly into surface waters, the creeks and streams that lead to the Northeast Cape Fear River in the case of Sledge, on down to the Cape Fear, on down to the Atlantic Ocean. So all of these compounds, and in the US, residential communities typically use about 6 times the amount of pesticide that a farmer uses per acre. 6 times what a farmer uses. So we're creating a bath of nasty compounds that poisoning ourselves, basically. I'm going to close with a math exercise because that's what I do. Imagine a food pyramid, if you will. At the bottom of the pyramid are plants, just like a pyramid on a box of cereal. So at the bottom of the food pyramid are plants, the primary producers. Above plants are primary consumers, snails, even turtles. And above them are little tiny things, Daphnia, copepods, amphipods, ostracods, little tiny jobs with lots of legs related to shrimps and lobsters. And they're feeding on microscopic bits. And in turn, those animals here, which are all the size of a dot on a printed page, they are eaten by small fish called mosquito fish, which look like a guppy. The North American mosquito fish is a cousin to the South American guppy, which in turn are eaten by sunfish, which in turn, you'll see in a moment, are eaten by largemouth bass. So in this math exercise, imagine a 1-pound bass. In order to get to be 1 pound, this bass had to consume at least 10 pounds of sunfish equivalent, which had to eat at least 100 pounds of mosquito fish equivalent, which had to eat at least 1,000 pounds of little teitses. Now, what about a 10-pound bass? It had to consume 100 pounds of sunfish, 1,000 pounds of mosquito fish, 10,000 pounds, 5 tons, the equivalent of a school bus in little teitses is required to produce one 10-pound bass. How is this relevant? That boat is a $47,000 hull with a $30,000 motor on the stern, sitting on a $3,000 trailer hooked to a $90,000 Ford F-150 pickup truck. And because that rig is so expensive, the person who owns it, they're not sleeping on the ground when they go fishing. They're going to go to a hotel. And because largemouth bass are contaminated with methyl mercury, we don't eat them, we throw them back. That means they have to go to a restaurant or to a grocery store to buy their food when they go out chasing the largemouth bass that they will catch and release. My point being, in North Carolina, the pursuit, capture, and release of largemouth bass is worth over $150 million a year. That's a pittance. In Oklahoma, it's almost $1 billion. And I'm only talking about largemouth bass, not smallmouth, not crappie, not sunfish, just largemouth bass. Texas, over $1 billion. California, almost $2 billion a year in the pursuit, capture, and release of largemouth bass. So when you hear from a politician, oh, we really care about the environment, but we have to take care of the economy. Think about, as Roger mentioned, just the $80 million in finfish and shellfish harvested from North Carolina for our consumption. That pales compared to trout fishing, bass fishing, offshore fishing, ecosystem services. So what do? Unplug, go outside, connect with nature, and then stand up and speak for nature when you can and if you can. Continue lifelong learning, and imagine yourself aboard a starship. I think that's about the most helpful advice I can give you. We're all stuck here together, almost 9 billion of us. And there's only one cookie jar. It's called planet Earth. And we've already removed close to 90% of the cookies. And with that, what's the use of a house if you haven't got a tolerable planet to put it on? Old Henry. All right, that's it. Thank you.
All right, it is time for some Q&A. So I will take this question first because she had first dibs. And then I'll scoot around with the microphone. If you raise your hand real tall, we're gonna try to stick to questions for the moment. So if you have a comment, come talk to us at the end and we can work that out. So questions only right now, and then we'll have a short wrap up at the end. All of our panelists are up here now and they all have their own microphones. So I'll start walking around. Does this work? Yeah.
I don't remember your name, gentleman in the middle with the glasses. You were showing the picture of where they're going to put the houses and what it's going to look like compared to something that's already been developed. And yet somebody said that those houses in that area are all on wells, and I assume septic tanks. Is there, what is the county's responsibility when it comes to ensuring those people that they're going to have water and sewer? A lot of those people are going to be coming from out of state. They're going to be people from cities where they have well-established historic infrastructure. And they're moving into an area where there are no well and septic tanks, where there is no sewer, where there is no water system. If that area floods, or if the ground under these houses is not stable, they're going to develop cracks in their foundation. If we have a really bad few years of hurricanes, they're going to have water up to the windowsills. And the developers come in, they build, they sell, they leave. They have no responsibility for what happens after they're gone, especially after a few years. And I just think that we need to publicize this a lot more to make people understand what they're getting into. And also, Mr. Wood, I went on a boat trip with you one time. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Well, that's a good statement. So all I'd say is that that area will certainly become, sewer and water with CFQA, putting in the lines, to all of those residences. There certainly is an issue with, sea level rise. I didn't mention it on here, but our science panel with CRC just last year came up and said that, basically supporting what NOAA had said, is that by 2050 we'll have 1 foot of sea level rise in our area. We've already had 7 inches of rise along the Cape Fear River just since 2000. And by 2070, there'll be 2 feet of total rise. And so most all of this area, not the upland area, but, much of the wetlands that are 3,000 plus acres, by 2070 will mostly be underwater of some form or fashion. And we've seen that happen. What's going to happen because we've had flood events with Florence and Isaias and other storms that have, inundated many of our floodplain areas along the West Bank, as well as even up here. We know that there was water on those acreage areas as well. So it's a cautionary tale, if you will, for knowing what to expect, when to expect it, and being able to plan for these areas. And of course, bringing in that many houses and that kind of infrastructure, you've still got to be able to do the connections, with all of those houses and with lines that are running up Castle Hayne too. And I'll turn it over to Kayne because she's been more familiar with the area since she lives up in that area to make a comment.
Just for clarification, they are bringing sewer and water. They have to because of the hydric soils a lot as far as the sewer goes. But the adjacent neighborhoods and most of Kayne is still on well water. We don't have water and sewer. Those 2 adjacent neighborhoods, Wood and Shew and up along Marathon Avenue on the other side, are on well water.
I'm going to jump in as well, if I can get it to work. Just to reinforce a point that Roger was making about hydric soils. These are very poorly draining soils, and our stormwater design, mandated by the state requires minimum stormwater design criteria. So all that they factor with stormwater control are rooftops, roads, and sidewalks. They don't take into account poorly draining soil. So when we get a 1-inch rain, 5-inch rain, that rain comes off of all the land, not just rooftops, sidewalks, and streets. So immediately our ponds overtop. There's no settling. Everything just flushes into the outlet, into the creek, on down to the ocean. So that's part and parcel. The issue that you're talking about is, what about long term? What about tomorrow? So we need to work on this minimum design criteria, which sounds like mediocrity to me, but that's an opinion.
Hi, Kayne. I'm Stephen Axthelm. I'm just curious as to the tenor you're getting from the commissioners at this point, because we brought 2,500 signatures to Save Smith Creek Park Preserve to them, and they didn't care. They had very little data to support what they were doing there to begin with, and they've now, all of your photographs remind me exactly of what Smith Creek Park Preserve the late Smith Creek Park Preserve looks like now. So, and Roger, I was there for your presentation to them about the Independence Boulevard lot, and it was as compelling as could be. I mean, do you think, and then there's the firefighters who were all getting cancer from the polluted water in Castle Hayne. Do you think you have a chance of winning this one? And I'm with you every step of the way, but I just ran into a brick wall, so.
Thank you for working on that. I used to walk my dog there all the time, and I won't even go now because it just makes me want to cry. And you did work hard at that. It made no sense, but we are actually hopeful. Again, like I said, I feel like Sledge Forest is a tipping point. There's just everything is wrong about that development. And because they have bypassed this rezoning process, the county commissioners at this point can't help us. We're going to work on that and the questionable loopholes that they're using to avoid that. But they've been pretty positive. I mean, we had in that December meeting, as I mentioned, they asked the planning department to address these concerns. Dane Scalise has actually talked a bit about we've got to slow down this development. And I think we all need to just continue to, don't give up. Don't give up. I know it's hard. When you lose a battle, you shouldn't lose, but we can't. We have to just keep raising our voices. We have to keep connecting with each other and growing this movement. And like I said, I believe in people power. I've seen it work. We got rid of Titan Cement. If we can do that, we can do this.
Yes, let me make a comment relative to this. One of the things that we've seen, for those of us who've been in this business for a few years now, it's actually been a change in the county. And I think it's been a positive change. 6 or 8 years ago, we did not get the same kind of hearing that we're getting today. And part of that because a lot of people are, stepping forward and making their comments. And people like Rob Zappel, Dane Scalise, Luke Waddell, Celeste Andrews, these people are really, and others, are really, stepping up to say that we need to do something different. But the only way to do something different is to really change the rule. And to change the rule, we've got to change what's going on for, as I mentioned before, the Unified Development Ordinance, where a lot of these things are housed, and change what's there. Once it's on the books, it's much more difficult to do anything about it. So I encourage everyone to become involved with this process that's going on right now. It's happening in Brunswick County, New Hanover County, and Pender counties, to be able to go out and say, these are things that we should be looking at. There's surveys that you can go online right now and make your comments relative to these. And just a very last comment, I'm very hopeful for Independence Boulevard. I'm forever hopeful. And I'm really hoping that, the city and the county can come together to, do the right thing on that piece of property as well.
Just very quickly, you're all familiar with that cliche, all politics are local. And I would advise we think of it more like all consequences of politics are local. And right now, the House of Representatives in North Carolina, not in DC, but the North Carolina House is looking at pushing a bill that will not only make it illegal for county commissioners to oversee how their county is managed, in a sense, but actually there's a little clause in there that will enable a developer to sue a county commissioner if that developer doesn't like the way the county commissioner has ruled on a development decision. So pay attention to what's going on up in Raleigh as well as here. And, whatever happened to that concern about government overreach? So I'm hopeful that the county commissioners are going to be speaking with their state representatives and saying, what's going on here? Why do we exist here local if you're just going to take away our role?
Thank you. My name's Adrienne. I have been going to the county commissioner meetings and speaking, and I'm hoping to go as many times as I can, and I'm writing my little 3-minute, not 3-minute 1 second, but 3 minutes speeches and things to say. And should I ask them to ask us like they did with the West Bank? Or is that a dangerous question? Remember how they had on the website, are you for or against developing the West Bank? And basically everybody said no. So they kind of said, oh, maybe we shouldn't do that. I want to ask them to do the same thing for Sledge Forest.
At this point, because they cannot be involved in it, they have to remain impartial. We want them to remain impartial. If they are publicly showing they support or don't support something, they might have to recuse themselves if it does eventually come before them down the line. So we think most of them do support us, but they're not going to discuss that publicly. They can't do that. They have to remain neutral. So you can ask. I just don't think you'll get an answer.
I'm asking them to ask the population to vote what they want.
Like a survey kind of thing? Sure, why not? Yeah.
And would you go to the state? If you're not happy here, can you go to the state and say, look, what's going on down here?
Sure. I mean, really, as many people and places as we can talk about our grievances and raise our voice, we should do it, And going back to the Smith Creek thing, they kept saying this is what the community wanted, and nobody had asked the community what they wanted, so that's actually a good idea.
This isn't a question per se, but thinking about the bill you just referenced, I wanted just to name it as House Bill 765, and you can find it on all the socials and online so that you can help us have agency in our local governments regarding development specifically, which I think that bill is specific. The other thing I wanted to say regarding the comprehensive plan update, that's super important. It's a great way. If we make the rules different, then we're going to have a different outcome. But if you look at the survey on the website, doesn't have a lot of teeth to it. And so we've gotten a contact within the planning department, and you can submit your individual comments for what you want to see in the comprehensive plan and how you want development to go in New Hanover County just by emailing. It's Virginia Norris, I believe, and Katia Brown, Boykin. But anyway, so send in your comment. Any written email coming into their inbox, they have to include in the process. The surveys, if you try to take the survey, you'll see there's not a lot of teeth to it. So take time and submit what you want to see for New Hanover County development in the future.
Yeah, you really need to make comments because it is generic, but at the same time, getting into that forum, there's places you can put comments on there, and Katia is really responsive to folks. So make sure and do that.
I was just curious about rule changes. What are some examples of responsible development? Like if you're going to change the rules, what do you want to see?
One, for the sake of human health, we need to do away with this minimum design criteria with stormwater management. We need to see a more responsible mechanism in place to control what is essentially highly polluted water before it enters our surface streams. So that means reducing density, which there's a lot of talk about. We need higher density to create more affordable housing. And that's really just kind of a red herring. They're not working here, developers that is, for affordable housing. They're working for money. And so the challenge is getting the infrastructure in place before we say, hey, come here and stay. A hotel can't, if they have a capacity of 100, they can't just say one morning, hey, let's put up 125 people. You don't have the infrastructure for it, and it's not here yet. So build the infrastructure, and then let's see what we can accommodate.
The River Bluff area is an example of an area that has maintained lots of natural areas within the housing development, and making sure that you've got stormwater, that can be handled within those areas that are still naturally occurring. The density on those is relatively small. Now, we do need, workforce housing. We need affordable housing. But in some of these things, we shouldn't let that be a guiding principle for some of our other development areas that, developing ones can say, well, we'll put in some workforce housing and then we'll have, super density everywhere else. What we need to have is a smart discussion, to me, about all of what's going on in the remaining part of the county. There is the opportunity to do infill development. But in some areas, of having, these areas next to areas like Wood and Shew and other areas out there, putting 4,000 houses, in a relatively small area, is just not the best thing to do. And I actually believe that, having the 1,000, if you go to 2,000, people may not like that, but that is a lot better than putting that kind of density that you really can't handle that kind of density on that small a piece of property. And so there are examples of places that have been maintaining some natural areas mixed in with those. And one thing I would encourage is whenever you are developing a piece of property, is that you don't just go in and clear cut an area and leave these little bits of trees scattered around. One of the things you really need to do in these areas is, have this as a planned development. Don't treat everything as a postage stamp development. These things are all connected, like along Sidbury Road. We need to have, development, but then you need corridors of green space all spread in the midst of that. And if you did those things, then you'd be able to handle stormwater. It'd be a lot more economically attractive to folks. And I'm pretty sure people would pay more money, for those treed areas than what they would pay for those clear-cut areas. And plus, you're again going to maintain, what we're having as issues in these areas of stormwater management and flooding that was mentioned, previously. So I think we should all sit down and discuss it. I'd love to sit down with copper builders and say, these are things that you should be looking at. I think that's what we need to do. And I'm happy that some of our planning department is taking initiatives to actually talk with folks too.
We have time for one more question, and I had 2 dibs up here. Do we have a preference for? I hope if you have a question that you can talk to our panelists at the end.
I just want to thank you for having this symposium so we can voice our concerns. This may have been addressed already. Is there a way this could be a county park or state park or a nature preserve for us? And the recent developments with the Endangered Species Act with the fly traps, is there any way that they could be protected in this area?
Unfortunately, with the Endangered Species Act, plants are considered property. And so if it's on private property, even if it's an endangered species, that doesn't give it protection. So if you have fly traps, even if it's listed and you don't want them there, you can dig them up, you can pave them over. So the Endangered Species Act enforces rules differently, whether it's a plant or an animal. As regards turning Sledge Forest into a park, or a preserve, or some other natural site, that would be very desirable. As Roger's map showed, this is all a significant natural heritage area, nationally significant natural heritage area. So turning it into a park means that it would be getting disturbed. So ideally, in my view, it would be a natural heritage preserve. And so with limited access, not all of it off limits to everybody all the time. We would just have to, as Roger was saying, we need to talk, sit down and come up with a comprehensive plan for how that parcel of land would be managed, because we can't just put a fence around it and leave it alone. It does have to be managed. It'll have to be maintained. There may be prescribed burns required from time to time, maybe a little even, no, I won't even say forest thinning, but some things do have to be managed, just so that it doesn't languish from not being permitted to run through the full life cycle of the habitat. So at one time, not too long ago, just a couple of years ago, there were steps being taken by the county with the state to acquire all of Sledge Forest and turn it into a significant natural heritage area. But that fell through because of money. And so now we're kind of behind the 8 ball. We need to come up with a strategy to convince the developer this is not the right place to build, or maybe tell them it's not the right time to build. When you look at what the stock market is doing right now, maybe this isn't the time to try to invest in 4,000 homes. But the lure of $20,000 to $50,000 profit on each house is hard for a developer to ignore. This is a $80 to $100 million profit deal. That's just hard to ignore. So we're up against money. We're pitting our natural resources against our contrived economic system.
Well, on that very uplifting note, I think we can pass it over to Kayne once more to wrap us up for the evening.
The fewer slides. Oh. Just a couple.
Thanks again, everybody, for being here.
All right, thanks for great questions. So we have a couple of QR codes. Students, I'm going to put one up after this, but if you have not signed our petition yet, you can click right there and do it right now. That's a screenshot from this morning. We're at 9,191 signatures. Woo-woo! We are getting really close to that 10K milestone, and we are planning a big old rally for that. So stay tuned for that. If you think you might want to help organize that, we'd love to hear from you. Also, if you want to donate, lawyers are not cheap. And we have lots of costs coming down the pipe, attorney fees, court costs, expert witness fees. So if you can help us there, we are really hyper-focused right now on raising funds because we've hired this legal counsel. We would love that help. And for those of you who have donated, thank you very much. If you're done there, I'm just going to put up that. That is, if you did not sign in, there's surveys. The top one, students, I know some of you are getting credit, so make sure you sign in there. There's just a couple questions on that survey. It's a way for us to get your contact information if you don't mind sharing it so that we can give you updates on things like a big rally that's coming up. While you're doing that, I'm just going to share one of my favorite quotes because it's one of my favorites. It's not until we hitch our wagons, until something larger than ourselves, that we realize our true potential. So I'm really hoping you might all consider hitching your wagon onto this effort. There's lots of ways you can help, big ways, little ways. We can use your help. And please don't ever underestimate your ability to make a difference. Some of the ways you can help, real quick. Should put that one up sooner. And I'm just going to share a little bit of closing remarks here. Go back for 1 second? Sure. You can find lots of help and support for doing some of these things on our website. We have information there on how to write a great letter, how to speak at a county commissioners meeting, all of their contact information for the planning department and the county commissioners. It's all on our website. You good? Okay. This is what I want to share. I think about that beautiful ancient forest, about those 350-year-old trees and what they might say to us. They can only talk, right? I think about all of those living things that are in that forest. The fragile ecosystem that has survived and thrived really for eons. And I remind myself that that forest is counting on me. It's counting on all of us to protect it from harm. We must be the unwavering defenders of Sledge Forest. We cannot let it be destroyed. We cannot allow for its destruction, especially not for the sole purpose of a developer's profit. And that's where I'm going to end it. Have a great night. Thank you for coming, and I hope I get to meet most of you in the coming months.